Whatever you thought of the hot, sticky days of the last couple of weeks, you have to add about 15, 20 degrees. Take the humidity back down just a little bit, and you'll know what kind of a day it was for Abraham in our story in the Middle East. Back then in the Middle East, not much happened during the heat of the day. People kind of vegged out. And Abraham is sitting at the entrance to his tent, remembering that they were nomadic people, not city folks. They followed the flocks around, and so tent was home. And life slows down in the middle of the day in the Middle East that time for a drowsy nap. Wait through the heat of the day, wait for the cool of the evening. In that drowsy state, Abraham is suddenly aware that 3 people have arrived. He didn't even see them coming. Chagrined that he had not seen their approach, he hurries to give them the expected hospitality of the Middle East, which means my tent is your tent and my food is your food, and hospitality is a virtue. He bows before them, extending friendship, even though they are strangers, and then seeks to make the offer of friendship sincere. My Lord, if I find favor with you, do not pass by your servant. Let a little water be brought and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. Let me bring a little bread that you may refresh yourselves, and after that, then you may pass on, since you have come to your servant. So Abraham strikes the alarm, scurries to make the promises come true. Sarah starts to knead bread. The servants prepare a calf that they have taken out of the herd. Curds and milk appear, and soon this modest feast is presented. The 3 strangers eat the meal out under the tree, observed by Abraham, who's off by the side, and the mandatory table talks begin. One of them asks about Abraham's wife, Sarah. Not seen so far. She's been in the tent doing all the work, probably resting from her frantic meal preparations. And the person says, I'll be coming back this way in a little while, and by then your wife will have a son. That's usually not normal after-meal table talk. But then none of the story is really what you would expect. In the earlier stories in Genesis about Abraham and Sarah, they have left their hometown at the bidding of God to come to a new place in order to be the parents of a mighty nation, with children as many as the grains of sand or the stars in the sky. That's been the promise. Abraham will be the father of a mighty nation. But there has been this huge problem of family succession. Abraham and Sarah are not parents, not been able to have children. Where is the promise going to come from, if not from Sarah and Abraham? Try as there might, Sarah is not pregnant. Now, Abraham does have a son by virtue of Sarah's Egyptian servant, Hagar, and this son's name is Ishmael. And so, as the story goes, perhaps that's the way Abraham will be the father of a mighty nation, that the heir will be not through Sarah, but through Hagar. And now this stranger who's at the door, having eaten with them, says, no, Sarah herself will have a son. You understand that Sarah and Abraham are senior citizens. They have been members of the Hebrew chapter of AARP for many years. Her pregnancy would appear to be the height of fantasy, and Sarah laughs at the prospect. And Abraham hears God's voice breaking into this bizarre scene saying, "Why did Sarah laugh and say, 'Shall I indeed bear a child now that I am old?' Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? At the set time I will return to you in due season, and Sarah shall have a son." That's the story. Has all kinds of interesting things about it for me. And in fact, Sarah does give birth to a son, Isaac, assuring the Hebrew line of ancestors will be traced through Abraham and Sarah. Now, if you look at the tradition of Islam, they claim that Abraham is indeed the common parent, but they would claim that Ishmael, the son of Hagar, the Egyptian servant girl, is the first of the ancestors for the Muslim faith. So in Islam, it is not Abraham and Sarah, but it's Abraham and Hagar. And the son is not Isaac who will have the line, it will be Ishmael. And that forms one of the first fault lines between Judaism and Islam. Well, more important to me in the story is the bold statement, "Is anything too wonderful for the Lord?" Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? When you read through the Bible, through both the Hebrew scriptures, the Old Testament, and the Christian scriptures, the New Testament, you are amazed, as I am, by the stories of miraculous God interventions into the lives of human beings. Just amazing things happen in those stories. An old woman producing this son, Isaac, late in life. That's pretty miraculous. The Moses stories of the plagues in Egypt and the manna appearing in the desert as they flee from Egypt. Elijah bringing down fire to consume the altar of the gods of Baal. David's victory over Goliath. Daniel in the lion's den. Jesus walking on the water and raising Lazarus. The many healing miracles, lepers, demon-possessed people, blind, crippled. And then the resurrection of Jesus. When was the last time you or I experienced anything like those kinds of supernatural events? Is God out of the habit of doing such things in our lifetimes? Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? A question we still ask. Why not now, God? Why not in the lives of people I care about? Where have you been in my life journeys at the tough times when I needed some extraordinary assistance? And I think those are all fair questions. I know I have prayed for God's intervention in the lives of people I have cared about. It's not always happened. I know I have prayed for God to be really close and not always felt that. And so the question, "God, what have you done for me lately?" is not an unreasonable question. And if we're honest, it's one of our questions. Leroy and Vivian Swenson were salt of the earth people in the first church I served out in Appleton, Minnesota. Leroy and Vivian were a hard-working farm couple with 4 children, eking out a living out there on the prairie when rainfall was the determining factor whether there was going to be a meager crop or no crop at all. They lived about 14 miles west of town, and even with that distance, I don't think anything happened in that church, but they and their family were not present. Their oldest child, Keith, had been born with cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy, and then came Colleen, and then came the twins, Lynn and Lynette. I thought they lived out their Christian faith in everything that they did, that in their own quiet way they were following the Jesus way. Before we started our ministry out in Appleton, they had traveled down to Texas, enticed by a faith healer who had a radio ministry, the beams of which reached up to Appleton. They went down to Texas and they worshiped there and they prayed there and they contributed to that faith healer while they were there. But Keith remained afflicted. And we had been there just a couple years when Keith died at the age of 15. If ever I had wanted God to intervene, it was with that family, for that person, wanting something extraordinary to happen. Is anything too wonderful for the Lord? What was wonderful was in fact the love of that family. The way in which they cared for Keith centered a lot of the family activities around Keith, what he could do and what he couldn't do. The way in which they went to the cities on numerous times to find someone else who might be helpful, operations to help his ability to get around, and the grace they showed at his passing. Never a bitterness, but a gratitude for the 15 years. What that has taught me is that the wonder of the Lord may be known to us in events that we cannot explain, are amazing, or even unexpected. But we know that we have been in the presence of God, even though we were clouded in our understanding. But something was going on, and we were privileged to have been a part of that. And I believe that the wonder of the Lord may not be in the event itself, but in the response of those of us who are enmeshed in the event. That sometimes happens. That grace and love and forgiveness has been extended that renews faith in the human family. It happens. And the wonder of the Lord may be revealed to us only after some time has elapsed, and we have had the opportunity to be reflective. And what had been a mystery to us, what we failed to understand with our limited understanding, is becoming more clear. And only then do we discover purpose and insight, and then finally reason to give God the glory, because some of the pieces now fit. And so this laughing with God that Sarah was about, that can be us too. Laughing with God can be part of our coping with what we do not yet understand. Laughing with God can be our willingness to confess there is so much that we do not know and perhaps will never know. That our frame of reference is so confined, our horizons are so limited, that our best response to that unknownness is to laugh and say, God, it's a mystery to me, but I'm willing to be taught in the time yet to come of what this all may mean. Laughing with God is allowing God to be God who knows best, who hovers over us and around us and invites us to enjoy this journey, this getting up every day into a new piece of life, trying to figure it out, trying to be aware of what's going on, trying to be sensitive to the people who are around us, trying to listen, trying to cope, trying to rejoice that you have the chance to live, and God is God. Amen.